Get that ridiculous idea out of your head that desire is begged for. Stop asking yourself what more you can do for that person to notice you. The one who begs loses, the one who pleads becomes invisible, and the one who gives in easily leaves no mark. Listen well. Attraction is not an accident, it's a consequence. It doesn't come from sweet words or desperate attentions. It comes from scarcity, from mystery, from the brutal reality that the human being craves what it cannot control. Look around you. Everyone's seeking validation. Everyone playing the same pathetic game of look at me, appreciate me, choose me. But what no one tells you is that the real power lies in the opposite. In being the one who needs nothing, the one who doesn't chase after anyone, the one who can disappear and leave a void impossible to fill. This is where Stoicism comes in, a philosophy for those who are not willing to be puppets of their emotions. For those who understand that control is power and that a well-trained mind is more lethal than any cheap seduction trick. Today, you're not going to learn how to please anyone. Today, you're going to learn how to become unforgettable, to play on your own board, to become someone so damn magnetic that the memory of you becomes a problem in the minds of others. 8 principles, 8 ways to bend the rules in your favor. If you apply them, people won't be able to stop thinking about you. If you ignore them, you'll remain another face in the crowd. Don't enter their game, make them want to play in yours. Most people live like pawns on a board they didn't even design. They jump when their fingers are snapped. They mold themselves according to someone else's approval. They play a game they don't even understand the rules of. And then they wonder why they're never the ones making the decisions. You have 2 options. Either you keep dancing to someone else's rhythm, or you become the melody they can't get out of their heads. Stoicism is clear. Never put your power in someone else's hands. If someone wants you to run after them, stand firm and let them wear themselves out waiting. If someone tests you, let them face the unbreakable wall of your indifference. Don't accommodate yourself to fit into their world. Make them squirm trying to fit into yours. It's not rebellion, it's dominance. It's not pride, it's intelligence. Desire is born not in comfort, but in uncertainty, in the feeling that they can't control you, that they can't have you whenever they want, because whoever plays on their own board never loses. And here's the secret. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about being unreachable in the deepest sense. Not out of arrogance, but because your life, your goals, your purpose are bigger than anyone who passes through it. Whoever clings too much to the need to be accepted ends up invisible. Whoever makes validation their oxygen, sooner or later suffocates. Look at the world coldly. What is always available loses value. The water that abounds is wasted, the food that is left over is thrown away, and the people who are always there are taken for granted. But what is rare, what is not easily obtained, what seems to be out of reach, becomes coveted. That's what it means to play on your own board. Not to chase, not to force, not to beg for spaces in anyone's life. Build your own world and make others strive to enter it. Don't get confused. This is not about empty indifference or cheap manipulation. It's not about pretending to be disinterested to attract attention. It's something much deeper. It's understanding that your worth does not depend on whether someone chooses you or not. It's living with the certainty that you don't need anything from anyone to be complete. And when you reach that level, when your world is so solid that it doesn't wobble due to the presence or absence of someone else, that's when you become magnetic. Because desire is born from distance, from the feeling that something is not completely assured. And if you live with the hunger to be chosen, if you base your identity on the validation of others, then you will always be dispensable. But if you are the one who chooses yourself, if you are the one who determines your own worth without waiting for anyone's approval, then the board changes. You stop being the one who seeks and become the one who is sought. And the most ironic thing is this: When you stop worrying about being chosen, you become the most tempting option. When you stop seeking attention, it becomes impossible to ignore you. And when you stop entering others' games, they will do whatever it takes to play in yours. True attraction is not a matter of luck, beauty, or charisma. It's a matter of power. And power belongs to those who are not afraid to lose, to those who do not depend on anyone to feel complete, to those who can be alone without feeling that something is missing. So ask yourself, are you playing on your board or someone else's? If the answer is not clear, you know what you have to do. 2. When they think they can ignore you, make their egos stumble upon the truth of your absence. The worst punishment for someone who underestimates your presence is to make them feel the void of your absence. Not with words, not with hints, not with pathetic complaints disguised as wounded pride, but with the dry blow of silence, with the crushing reality that you are not there, that you were never really tied down, that they never had you as they thought they did. Because here's the truth few want to accept: absence weighs more than presence. When you're always available, when your attention is an infinite resource, when they can discard you and still know that you'll be there when they decide to look back, you become air, invisible, tasteless, something taken for granted, something that is there without effort, something that costs nothing to get. But take yourself off the map, and you'll see how everything changes. The human ego is a fragile animal. It feeds on certainty, on control, on knowing that it can have what it wants when it wants it. And when someone thinks they can ignore you without consequences, they do so with the assurance that you are still orbiting around them. But when you suddenly disappear, when the message they expected doesn't arrive, when the call they assumed they would receive doesn't ring, when they stop being the center of your attention, that's where anxiety comes in. That's where they stumble upon the truth of your absence. And there's nothing more disturbing to someone's ego than realizing that their power over you never existed. Stoicism teaches that self-mastery is the greatest of powers. And if you can control your need to be present, if you can resist the urge to remind them of your existence, then you automatically change the rules. Because you're no longer the one waiting, you're the one being waited for. People don't get hooked on what they understand. They obsess over what they can't explain. And when you disappear at the right moment, when you don't respond as expected, when you let the void speak for you, you create uncertainty. And uncertainty, when it has no answer, turns into recurring thought. Without you having done absolutely anything, you are now an enigma. Now you are a ghostly presence they can't ignore. Now you've planted a seed that will grow in their mind without you being able to be uprooted. But this doesn't work if you do it expecting an immediate reaction. If you count the minutes waiting for them to ask about you, if you check your phone waiting for them to notice your absence, then you haven't understood anything. Because the key is for your absence to be real, not a cheap strategy to manipulate. You must disappear because you have bigger things to do, because your world doesn't revolve around their validation, because you don't need them to look for you to know who you are. Absence only works when you're truly willing to leave. If you're afraid of losing them, they'll never miss you. If you're terrified of being forgotten, you'll never become unforgettable. And if you can't stand your own loneliness, you'll always be dependent on the presence of others. So let your absence speak, not with resentment, not with rancor, but with the relentless tranquility of someone who knows that their presence is a luxury, not a right. And when they understand it, it will be too late. 3. If they believe you're an open book, become an endless enigma. Nothing kills desire faster than predictability. What is obvious, what is understood effortlessly, what is shown without resistance, loses its ability to fascinate. Humans do not obsess over what they have in the palm of their hand. They obsess over what slips away from them. If every word, every movement, every thought of yours is easy to read, if you are someone who always responds the same, who is always available, who always makes their intentions clear, then you have become a book of few pages. one that is quickly skimmed, easily understood, and left forgotten. Stoicism teaches that true power lies in restraint, in the ability to control not only what you do, but what you allow others to see of you. It's not about being fake. It's not about playing mysterious with empty strategies. It's about understanding that the most valuable thing is not what you give immediately, but what you force others to discover. Mystery is a sharp weapon, because when people can't predict you, when they feel there are more layers than they can reach, when each interaction leaves an open door instead of a resolved path, then their mind starts to work in your absence. They are left with doubts, with interpretations, with the feeling that there is something more behind what you show. And that feeling is addictive. Whoever becomes an enigma never ceases to be interesting, but this does not mean that you should hide everything or build an impenetrable mask. It means that you must learn the art of omission. Speak less than what others expect. Show only what is necessary. Never reveal all your thoughts. Never give everything at once. People value what they discover for themselves, not what is given to them effortlessly. The problem with most people is that they believe the more they explain, the more they will be understood. They believe that if they show everything they are, if they detail every thought, if they give their entire story immediately, they will be appreciated for their transparency. But the reality is different. An excess of information does not create connection, it creates wear. What is offered without resistance does not generate emotion. If you are an open book, anyone can read to the last page and move on. But if you are an endless enigma, each interaction is a chapter that never fully closes. People remember what they do not fully understand, what leaves them with more questions than answers, what forces them to imagine, to fill in the blanks, to create their own version of the story. And when someone starts to build a version of you in their mind without even realizing it, you have already settled in there. So don't explain too much. Don't show everything in one act. Don't give every thought without leaving anything to the imagination. Let them try to decipher you. Let them get frustrated at not being able to fully understand you. Let them feel that there is always more to discover, because a well-constructed mystery is never forgotten. 4. Don't be where they expect you. Master the art of lethal absence. The problem with most people is that they are predictable. They follow a pattern. They are where they are expected. They react as anticipated. They appear just when they are supposed to appear. And in this routine of the expected, they lose all impact. Whoever is easy to find is never missed. The human mind works with contrasts. What is always there becomes part of the landscape. What disappears at the exact moment leaves a void impossible to ignore. It's not about playing hard to get on a whim. It's about your presence having weight, your absence being an event, that when you're not there, it's noticeable. Stoicism teaches that control is not in what others do, but in how you choose to position yourself. And here's the brutal truth. If you're always available, you'll never be an event. If you're always easy to predict, you'll never be a surprise. Lethal absence is not about disappearing for the sake of disappearing. It's about choosing with surgical precision when to be and when not to be. It's about creating uncertainty in the minds of others without saying a single word. It's about breaking the monotony of the expected and making people question their own perception of you. The most magnetic in history were not those who were everywhere, but those who knew how to disappear at the exact moment so that their absence spoke louder than their presence. The key is in detachment, because if you're dying to always be there, if you feel the need to respond quickly, to prove your existence constantly, then you'll never be able to master this strategy. Absence is only lethal when it comes from someone who is not afraid to leave. If they expect you in one place, don't go. If they assume you'll respond, make them wait. If they think they've got you secured, break their certainty, and when they least expect it, reappear with a weight they previously couldn't notice. Desire doesn't survive in routine. Desire feeds on doubt, distance, the possibility of loss. Do it right, and you'll see how the dynamic changes. You'll stop being a constant and become an enigma. People will notice when you're not there, wonder why you're not responding as before, feel that something has changed without being able to put it into words. And in that discomfort, in that void, is where obsession begins to build. But this is not for the weak. It's not for those seeking immediate gratification, nor for those who need constant validation from others. It's for those who understand that real control is not exercised in presence, but in absence. Because when your absence weighs more than anyone's presence, then you've won the game without even playing it. 5. When they seek answers in you, let their minds invent them. The biggest mistake you can make is to give everything away too easily. People do not obsess over what they understand. They do not fantasize about what they have resolved. They do not get stuck on something that leaves no room for doubt. What is fully explained is quickly forgotten. What leaves open questions becomes a recurring thought. The human being is a machine for filling voids. If you do not give a clear answer, it will invent one. If you do not explain your intentions, it will imagine scenarios. If you do not say what it wants to hear, its mind will fabricate a version of you that it can never fully decipher. And that is what generates attraction. Not certainty, but the abyss between what they believe they know and what you really are. Stoicism teaches that control is not to impose, but to allow others to get tangled in their own minds. You do not need to convince anyone of who you are. You do not need to justify yourself or explain everything you do. It is enough to drop pieces, to leave loose fragments, to say enough to arouse interest, but never so much as to extinguish it. Look at how the human mind works. What is complete is discarded. What is a mystery is studied, analyzed, becomes an obsession. If you give quick answers, if you explain your actions, if you make clear each of your motivations, you become obvious. And the obvious is boring. Real magnetism does not come from what you say, but from what you keep silent. When someone seeks an answer in you, give them one that leaves them thinking. When someone tries to predict you, calmly break their expectation. When they want to understand you, make every attempt to do so, leave them with more questions than certainties. Because uncertainty is a slow poison, one that, once it enters the mind, refuses to leave. Who cannot be deciphered is never forgotten. But here's the key. This is not about being false or hiding behind a character. It's about understanding that what really makes you interesting is not what you reveal, but what you allow others to discover for themselves. Do not tell anyone what you feel, let them sense it. Do not explain your intentions, let them interpret them. Do not give them all the pieces, let them try to assemble them unsuccessfully. And in that process, in that frustration of not being able to have you resolved, is where you become unforgettable. Because when someone has to imagine you, when they must construct their own version of you in their mind, you become something they can never fully control, and what is not controlled is never ignored. 6. Shatter the illusion of certainty, eliminate the need, and awaken the obsession. Desire dies in certainty. It withers in routine. It suffocates in the predictable. Everything that is easy to understand, everything that is guaranteed, everything that leaves no room for doubt, becomes part of the landscape. If someone feels they can have you whenever they want, if they know exactly how you're going to react, if there's no room for uncertainty, then their interest in you becomes automatic, mechanical, insignificant. You become a boring constant, an unnoticed presence. Stoicism teaches that control is not found in what you possess, but in what you are able to let go of without fear. And here's the secret. When you don't cling, when you don't depend, when you can disappear without looking back, that's when you become irreplaceable. Because desire feeds on the possibility of loss. It grows in the lack of control. It strengthens in uncertainty. What is sure, what doesn't represent a challenge, what is guaranteed, never generates urgency. But what they can't control, what they can't decipher, what they don't know if they'll ever have again, becomes an obsession. The human mind doesn't engage with what is easy. It gets trapped in what it can't fully understand, in what generates unanswered questions, in what seems to be within reach, but never completely assured. Don't play the role of the one who is always available, the one who always responds, the one who always waits. Don't become a monotonous certainty. Be a possibility in motion. Be the variable they can't predict. Don't be a fixed destination. Be a trail that can fade at any moment. When someone feels they might lose you, when their mind starts to calculate every move, when they start to doubt their own power over you, then something changes. The primitive fear of scarcity is activated, the instinct of preservation, the feeling that what seemed secure is no longer so. But this is not about cheap manipulation. It's not about disappearing on a whim or playing with others' minds. It's about living with such strength, with such confidence in yourself that your presence never feels guaranteed. That being with you is a privilege, not a habit. Look around you. People don't chase what they have assured, but what they feel they might lose. No one clings to what they're not afraid to let go of. Desire is not just attraction, it's fear in disguise. Fear of losing something valuable. Fear of not being able to replace it. Fear that when they realize what you really mean, it may already be too late. That's why most never awaken a true obsession in others. They are predictable. They don't make an impact. Their presence is something that is assumed, not something that is valued. And when you become part of the background, part of the scenery, part of the norm, you become forgettable. If you want to be unforgettable, you can't be completely accessible. If you want to be desired, you can't be easily understood. If you want someone to feel your absence, you must first prove that your presence was never an easy gift to obtain. When someone feels they might lose you, suddenly you start to matter more than you ever imagined. They cling, they wonder what changed, they try to regain control. And the more they try to decipher you, the deeper you embed yourself in their mind. Break the illusion of certainty, let them feel the lack of control, eliminate the need. And in that feeling of emptiness, in that space where security has been shattered, that's where obsession begins. Because what they can't control, they can never forget. 7. Make every moment without you an unforgettable reminder. Absence is not just disappearing. It's not an empty act. It's not a simple trick to grab attention. True absence leaves a mark. It leaves an echo in the minds of others, a void they can't ignore. The problem with most people is that when they leave nothing behind. They fade away like a weightless whisper, like an insignificant memory. The key is not in leaving, but in what you leave when you're no longer there. A well-constructed ghost is worth more than a presence without impact. Stoicism teaches that real power is not in the immediate, but in what remains. It's not about being constant, it's about being unforgettable. And what persists most in the human mind is not continuous presence, but meaningful absence. If every moment without you feels exactly the same as when you were there, then you were never really there. But if your absence weighs, if it leaves a mark on someone's routine, if everything you touch is impregnated with your essence, then you have won the game without needing to play it. People don't miss what disappears. They miss what changed their way of seeing the world. They miss what altered their way of feeling. They miss what, even from a distance, continues to whisper in their minds. Don't try to be someone who is simply remembered. Be someone who can't be forgotten. How is this achieved? It's not about seeking to be memorable with cheap tricks, with forced gestures, with a desperate attempt to leave a mark. It's about impacting others' perceptions so deeply that, even when you're not there, you remain present. When you speak, let your words be hard to ignore. When you're there, let your energy be something that is noticed. When you leave, let your absence not go unnoticed. The difference between someone who leaves a mark and someone who simply existed in another's life lies in the intensity with which their presence was experienced. But here's the most brutal key. For them to miss you, they first have to feel they had something valuable. If you didn't contribute anything unique, if your presence was just more background noise, then your absence will mean nothing. Don't be a weightless shadow. Don't be someone who leaves and is never mentioned again. Be the thought that pops into their mind when they least expect it. Be the feeling they can't shake off, the emotion they can't replicate, the absence that hurts more than any presence. Because when you achieve this, when every moment without you is a reminder of what you were, then you have transcended. You have become more than a person. You have become an idea. And ideas don't die, they don't get forgotten, they don't get replaced. What is always present is taken for granted. What is missing becomes a necessity. Make every moment without you an unforgettable reminder, and you'll see how, even in your absence, you continue to dominate their minds. 8. Let them try to forget you, but become the question they can never answer. Forgetfulness is a luxury only granted to the irrelevant, to the predictable, to what never echoed in the mind, to what left no cracks in perception, to what did not alter the way someone sees the world. People forget what they fully understood, but what was left unfinished, what left more questions than answers, what was never fully given, becomes a thought impossible to eradicate. The mind does not seek to remember, it seeks to solve. And if they feel they have solved you, if they believe they have read every page of your story, they will discard you effortlessly. But if when thinking of you something does not fit, if there are loose pieces that they cannot put together, if what you once said contradicts what you did, then you have sown a seed that will grow uncontrollably. The poorly solved mystery is the poison that memory cannot spit out. Most seek to be unforgettable with poor strategies, constant presence, excessive words, desperate attempts to mark territory. But memory does not work like that. It does not cling to the obvious, but to what challenges its understanding. What you can have whenever you want loses value. What you believe to know perfectly becomes landscape. But what you felt close and yet never fully understood, what seemed certain and then faded without warning, what you never fully possessed, that stays, that becomes a persistent shadow. Stoicism does not teach you to be unforgettable, it teaches you to be a dilemma. Do not seek to be a beautiful memory, be an enigma. Do not seek to be the person they evoke with nostalgia, but the one who, when remembered, leaves a strange taste in the mouth, a feeling of something unfinished, a subtle frustration that makes the mind return again and again without finding peace. If someone believes they can forget you, let them try. But if you did your job well, their own brain will betray them. Forgetfulness does not work when there are unanswered questions. You do not need to leave a visible mark. You just need to sow uncertainty at the right moment. You just need that every time they believe they have moved on, there is something they cannot fully explain. Do not be a story with a clear ending. Be one that was left open right at the climax. Because here is the cruelest truth of all. What closes is forgotten. What remains open torments. If they can explain you, they replace you. If they can label you, they surpass you. But if they never knew for sure who you were, if every memory of you comes with an attached question, if there are phrases of yours that suddenly take on new meanings over time, then they can never let you go. It's not about playing with anyone's mind, it's about your essence being impossible to file away. That when they try to write the final point of your story, their mind forces them to go back, to review the pages, to question if they really understood what happened. And there, in that persistent doubt, in that uncertainty that grows with the years instead of fading, in that something they cannot fully define, that's where you become unforgettable. because no one can forget an unanswered question. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment "I am Stoic" as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.